Hey everyone, Anarch here. So, if you're anything like me, you've had this experience numerous times in your life where you're talking with somebody about politics, but you feel like the two of you are speaking a totally different language. You say, I support socialism, and they hear, I want the government to give everybody handouts. You say, I hate capitalism, and they hear, I don't think people should be rewarded for their hard work. That's not your fault. In a very real way, we are speaking a different political language. After all, power structures benefit enormously from these disconnects. If the citizens in a society are unable to even understand the basic terms that define a political discourse, they also won't have the necessary vocabulary to discuss the ideas that form the world around them. For that reason, this will be the first in a series of videos where I lay out a group of political terms and then define them as concisely and understandably as possible. I hope this video and others will be a place you can point people to as a quick reference and, hopefully, as a tool to build consensus on the meaning of these words. I won't claim that all of these entries are perfect, nor that there isn't some dispute over each of them. But these definitions represent what I, from my research, believe the most consistent descriptions are, as well as the usages that I use in all of my videos. So, with all that out of the way, let's do the work of decrypting the jargon. Considering that today we are going to be discussing several of the foundational political ideologies, it's probably a good idea for us to develop a framework for our conversation. And, luckily, one that's quite popular is also quite useful, called the political compass. This conceptualization, it should be noted, didn't exist during the time that many or most of these terms were created. Almost all of the words that define our discourse were created in a time when there was only one political axis: left versus right. Left and right arose from the French Revolution, when those supporting revolution and opposing monarchy sat to the left of the throne, and those supporting traditional notions of social organization sat to the right. However, during the centuries that followed, as political theory developed further than the Jacobins, it became clear that a single axis didn't properly contain the nuances that were needed to explain the differences between varying ideologies. For this reason, the political compass contains two axes. The first axis is left versus right. The modern version of this axis, however, concerns itself almost primarily with economic arrangements. Particularly, it asks the question of who should own and manage the workplaces in an economy. The further right an ideology, the more it tends to believe that individuals should own the workplace instead of the workers who operate the workplace. The further left an ideology, the more it will tend to believe that workers should own their workplaces instead of individuals. Therefore, we can find if an ideology or person is left or right of the center by asking the question, should the workers own their workplaces? If the answer is yes, then that ideology is left of the center. If the answer is no, then that ideology is right of the center. The other axis is a scale between authoritarian versus anti-authoritarian. This axis concerns itself with the power of the state. As you go upwards on this scale, you will tend to believe more and more that power should be concentrated in the state and not in the people. Going downwards, the state is divested of power, and the people are given more and more direct control over society. Thus, to determine whether someone is north or south of the center on this axis, the question we should ask is, should power be more centralized in a state or in the people? If the answer is in a state, that person advocates authoritarianism. If the answer is in the people, they advocate anti-authoritarianism. If you'd like to see where you place on these two axes, I recommend you go take the test that the creators have hosted at politicalcompass.org. I've put the link in the video description. People often find that they don't place where they think they will, so it could be an interesting exercise. My score usually ends up looking something like this. So, with all that out of the way, let's make our list of terms. Liberalism is a tradition characterized by the values of the Enlightenment, whose thinkers primarily focused upon the concepts of freedom, liberty, and equality. These shared values then led many to an emphasis on consent of the governed, minimally coerced markets, and individual self-determination, placing itself in opposition to monarchy. Although this tradition represented a revolutionary tendency in the centuries that followed the Enlightenment, bringing about capitalism and representative democracy, it now rests comfortably within the Overton window, making it the dominant aesthetic of the ruling class. Although classical liberalism contained some minor left contingent, modern liberalism has only embraced the aspects which are in the right wing of the political spectrum. Conservatism is the impulse to conserve the current paradigm. This means that, in any era, the conservative can be characterized by their desire to preserve what they perceive as the existing traditional structures and to stymie all attempts to overturn or alter them. Conservatism, having no fundamental ideology other than conservation of prevailing norms, has no inherent placement on the political compass. However, in the modern era, given that capitalism is the dominant economic system, conservatism is largely far right-wing, with an authoritarian bent. Progressivism is defined by the desire to progress. Contrary to the conservative, the progressive is unconcerned with what structures are traditional, or whether there may be challenges in the process to overturn traditional modes of organization. This view takes the improvement of human lives as the highest goal. Progressivism also has no inherent placement on the political compass, but because it seeks to move past prevailing norms in favor of human progress, modern progressivism tends to trend toward the center left. Capitalism is a hierarchical economic arrangement in which the businesses in an economy are owned by individuals, typically those who have enough initial capital to invest in a company. The owner of each business then signs contracts with laborers who agree to give the owner the full value of their labor in exchange for a wage. Capitalism comprises the majority of the right wing on the political compass, persisting through several of the ideologies in consideration. Socialism is an economic system where the workplaces are owned and managed by the workers, either through democratic determination or through self-management. In this arrangement, the workers either receive the full value of their labor or they are able to set their wages in consensus with their fellow workers. Socialism almost defines the left wing of the political compass, manifesting itself in varying ways depending on one's conceptualization of what ownership and management mean. State capitalism is a term used to refer to an economy where the workplaces are owned and directed by a centralized state apparatus, mimicking the property relations of capitalism, but with the state standing in for the role of the private owners in a traditional capitalist economy. When industries are nationalized but control remains centralized, this is state capitalism. State capitalism is placed in the left authoritarian section of the political compass. State socialism is when there is some mixed ownership and management of the workplaces, where the workers generally have more say over the decisions of those businesses than the state. In this system, the state is meant to function as a sort of warden which protects the people while they direct the economy. This arrangement has a historical tendency to devolve into state capitalism. State socialism is placed in the left wing of the political compass and just above or below the axis of authoritarianism. Anarchism is the belief that hierarchy is fundamentally damaging to society, and that therefore all power structures must prove themselves legitimate or be dismantled. Anarchists therefore typically advocate flat structures where decisions are made directly by the people and reject any system where power is centralized. Anarchist ideologies tend to lie within the bottom part of the left anti-authoritarian quadrant of the political compass. Communism is predicated on the abolition of the market, money, and the state. Communism is socialist as well because the workers would still own and manage their workplaces. It is fundamentally encapsulated in the phrase, "from each according to his abilities, to each according to his needs." Communism lies almost exclusively at the bottom of the left anti-authoritarian quadrant of the political compass. Neoliberalism is an economic paradigm which focuses upon privatization of public amenities, deregulation of the economy, and economic globalization. It is named thusly because it represents a modern return to the liberal conception of market dynamics, which viewed government intervention as undesirable. Neoliberalism is a far-right, center-authoritarian ideology. Fascism is the collusion of the state and the private sector in order to create a dictatorial national control. This central collusory body then uses ethnic or national pride in order to bolster an in-group, out-group mentality for the interests of re-establishing what it considers idyllic hierarchies. Fascism can be understood as a desire to return to an era previous to liberal democracy, while still working within the constraints of capitalist property relations. Fascism is a center to far right-wing authoritarian ideology. For today, that's where we're going to end our list. We have, of course, left out many different types of economies, political systems, social arrangements, and specific political terms unique to each ideology, but I hope this represents a good primer on the common terminology that is needed to discuss political topics in our everyday lives. Hopefully now, when you have that conversation at the beginning of the video, you'll know what to say in response, and maybe there will be a little bit less yelling past each other in your future political discussions. I will almost certainly create more videos like this one in the future. If there are any terms you want to see me discuss in those videos, tell me in the comments. And if this helped you out, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. After all, if the video achieves its purpose and gets linked to people with opposing viewpoints, there are going to be more than a few of them who knee-jerk dislike the video out of anger. Also, if you want to help me eat and pay the bills, please become a patron at the Patreon link below. Every single dollar really does help. Anyway, see you around. And remember, if we want a better world, we must all know what we're fighting for.